I would launch up Eclipse. I'm using Mac, so I'm typing in Eclipse in here, or you can do a control escape in Windows and type in eclipse.exe, and you should see an icon like this come in. Otherwise, you can go to your Eclipse folder and double click on the eclipse.exe to launch it up. So let's launch up Eclipse. When you launch up Eclipse, Eclipse asks for something called a workspace. Workspace is nothing but a folder where Eclipse stores all its configuration. With Eclipse, there are a lot of things that you can configure for a project. How do you want to format source code? What are the save actions you would need? What are your preferences? All these kinds of preferences are stored in a particular folder. Your source code also might be stored in the same folder as the workspace. You have to give in some folder from your local hard disk. I've chosen Eclipse in 28 minutes as the folder name. I can now go ahead and click OK. Couple of platform related tips before we move further. If you're using Mac, whenever I say control, use command. Use the command button instead of the control button whenever I say control. That's number one. Number two is Eclipse has this thing called preferences. So Eclipse preferences. This is how you access it in Mac. But if you're using Windows, then you need to say Windows preferences. So if you look at somewhere down here, you'd see something called Windows. And then you click that, and then you can bring up preferences. That's one change. So if you're using Windows, whenever I say Eclipse preferences, you have to go to Windows and bring up preferences. There's a small difference in how Eclipse lays out things in Mac and Windows. So those are the two things you need to remember. Whenever I say control in Mac, go ahead and type in command. And whenever I say Eclipse preferences, you're actually going to Windows preferences in Windows. Those two aside, you'd see that once we clicked OK, Eclipse brings up this window, which is called the Eclipse launch page. The thing which we are using in here is the Java EE IDE for web developers. So there is a simple Java IDE as well. So there's an Eclipse Java IDE and a Java EE IDE. Java EE IDE comes in with a lot of plugins which would help us to develop web applications easy, whereas the Java IDE would just have the plugins which would be interesting for Java. If you're interested in trying out a few of the tutorials, you can go ahead and click the tutorials, or you can check out the samples in here as well. What I would do is I would close the welcome screen and I would want to set up a project. Before setting up the project, what I want to also do is I really like seeing things very big. So I want to increase the font size. So I click Eclipse preferences. If you are in Windows, it's Windows preferences. And I'm typing in font. What I'm doing is I'm typing in font and I would want to increase the basic text font. So I would choose this option, text font, and I would want to increase this. So I'll say edit. For all my videos, I really like to have bigger font so that you can clearly see what's happening. So what I do is increase the font size. So now we have it set at 28, and that would be really clear and easy to see. Now let's get started with creating our first Eclipse project. The way you create projects with Eclipse is File, New, or the keyboard shortcut is Control N. Just press Control N and this interface comes in, or File, New, and then you can type in the kind of thing that you would want. Actually, you can expand and choose different things. That's a slow way. So let's say if I want to create a Maven project, I'll type in Maven and then it comes up. So you don't need to really click and then go and choose. All that you need to do is when the wizard comes up, type in what you want. So I want to create a Java project. So I'll type in Java project. And then that becomes the first option. I select that and I press enter to choose the next. That's it. Now I can give a project name to this. I'll call this Eclipse in 28 minutes. And you can choose which JRE you would want to use. I mean JRE Java version which you want to use. I'll use Java 8. That's not a problem at all. And I would click finish. It's asking me whether to use something called a Java perspective. We would discuss perspectives in one of these sections which is dedicated for perspectives. Do not worry about them. I'll click yes. So let's use Java perspective and let's go ahead Eclipse comes up with this default layout. If you look at this particular layout, there is a list of tasks that you can have. I mean, that's not really important. I'll close that out. There is an outline which is shown in here. We'll discuss about outline, and you'd see another set of views in here. And on the left hand side is something called a package explorer. Package explorer is where you can see the source files that you have. What I'll do now is I'll go ahead and create our first Java class. So right click, new, or you can say control N. Now what do I want to create? Java class. So I'll type in class. So class, click next, enter. So I would want to create my first Java class, so I'll call this first Java. You can also put in a package if you would want to. So com in 28 minutes Eclipse, and I would want a public static void main as well. So I'll do that and click finish. That is all that is involved in creating a Java file with Eclipse. And now you have the complete Java file ready. So now you can go ahead and run this program. Now how do I do that? Right click, run as Java application. The console does not come up because we have nothing to show on this thing. So what I'll do is I'll type in system dot, you'd see that Eclipse is bringing this drop down which shows all the things that you can use from system. So system.out.println, and I would want to print hello world. And now I can say right click, run as Java application, or alt shift XT hello world. That's perfect. So now you'd see that this is the view which is called console, where the output of the program is printing. In this step, we have launched up Eclipse, created a workspace, created our first Java class, and learned how you can run it. What I would recommend you to do is try and play around with creating more Java classes. Because you are a beginner, I really recommend you play around and try and figure out what's happening in here. From the next section onwards, we would start editing Java files using a lot of shortcuts, and we would start using a lot of advanced features.